Hello, Lorenzo here. Episode 17 of KSP Next, a venereal probe. I'm not sure if that's the correct terminology, but we're sending a probe to Venus. It's the Newcomb 1, and our mission objective is threefold. We're going to send the probe to Venus, return science, and if possible, establish an orbit around Venus. The name Newcomb comes from the American astronomer that used the Venus transits in the 1800s to calculate the size of the solar system. But that's a history lesson for another day. Our rocket is performing splendidly. The first stage is once again piling on frightening amounts of G-forces. And while it does so, let me just quickly say that I think I fixed the audio desyncs from the last couple of episodes. It's actually a problem that happened a few times before in the past. It happens when big rockets happen and the game runs at lower than 30 frames per second while recording. That causes the audio to desync. But there's a fix and I applied it. Anyway, back to rockets. Here we have the first stage. It has burnt out. We're ditching the fairing. And because the first stage is so brawny, we end up in a pretty steep trajectory, unless I do the steering exactly right. On this mission I did it mostly right, and our apoapsis now is about 225 kilometers. Problem that you're seeing now is that the fuel in the second stage isn't actually settled, and we're using the probe reaction control system to do that, to perform the ullage, but it's pretty tiny and the second stage is fairly heavy. So you can just see those thrusters working and imagining they are producing a fraction of a G worth of acceleration. And just imagine in your head the fuel inside the tank just slowly settling on the bottom of the tank. And I'm keeping an eye on the on-screen readout to see when that has happened so that we can ignite the engine. This is one of the things why a steeper trajectory is also, it's not as efficient, but it is easier. Your margins of time to do things like this are a little bit higher. I mean, we're spending a good minute almost settling the fuel, and it doesn't affect our mission in the slightest. Other than we could have had a few more delta V's. As you can see on the screen, the fuel is settling now. It's very stable, and the rockets have ignited. Once again, no failures. The second stage is delivering the payload to orbit. The payload, of course, being the same, literally 100% the same satellite as was in the previous episode. That's currently en route to Mars. You can see it in the Kerbal alarm clock window in the lower right. But we're sending another one to Venus. Here we go. We are now in orbit. And we just have to quickly set up a maneuver node to insert this thing into a Venus trajectory. I did just that, won't bore you with the details, and here we go. Second ignition of these engines. Viewer corrected me on the channel, saying that these were closed cycle engines, not gas generator ones. The difference is that the exhaust from the gas generator is actually fed back into the combustion chamber rather than expelled. This makes them more efficient. So that's that. Our injection burn is now almost complete. The second stage has burned out. That will stay around the Earth, albeit in a very elliptical orbit. And here we have the final satellite. It needs to do about 200 meters per second more to finalize the injection burn, and after that's done it has just under 3 kilometers per second remaining to play with around Venus. Now, I listed the establishing of an orbit around Venus as the number 3 priority. I mean, obviously we've never been there. Going there at all is priority number 1. Returning science to develop more awesome rockets is priority 2. But it would be really nice if we can establish orbit there and use this one as a communications relay. Because I'm thinking a lander on Venus should be relatively easy. Now, it's super hard, but delta V wise, it's relatively easy. You need to bring a heat shield, and you need to make sure your probe can withstand the heat, at least for a while. But you don't need super efficient rockets, because the atmosphere will literally do all the slowing down for you. You don't even need a parachute, if I'm correct. But if we're going to do a lander, we're going to need a comms relay. And that could be this guy, if the orbit insertion is within the delta V budget, which I think it is. I didn't do the math. I'm just bringing as much as is feasible on our current rockets. Um, while I'm talking, the injection burn has been completed, needs finalization, which is happening in fast forward here. I'm doing the finalization a little bit away from the Earth. While this is strictly not super efficient, actually it's just straight up less efficient than doing it next to the Earth, it is more precise because we're not like following a very curved trajectory anymore, and the exact moment of doing the correction doesn't have as big an impact as it has otherwise. Anyway, fast forwarding about a year, about 200 days, the probe is now rapidly approaching Venus, and we're setting up a maneuver node to further fine tune the course so that the periapsis, the flyby point, the lowest point, is really close to Venus, so that we need the least amount of delta V to establish orbit. Now, of course, Venus is a long way away, and we are currently experiencing a communications delay of about 5 minutes. So we're using the flight computer again, as you can see here. Thank God the flight computer does allow time warp. It automatically throttles back the warp. So apart from not having direct control, it doesn't actually mandate waiting the delay out live. And here we are asking it to perform the 200 something meter per second correction burn to set up our approach to Venus. An additional thing that this flight computer could be really good at, or could be good in, it's as good as it is. It's not a person. It's a flight computer. We know exactly how good it is. What we could use this for is for communications blackouts. If we need to do a burn on the dark side of a planet, and dark here being outside of communications line of sight, we can program the computer to do the move. I've not done that yet. It should be fairly tricky, maybe, but who knows? This could be an option. Anyway, I'm talking about weird shit. The computer is now doing this burn, and this is the first proper extraterrestrial burn that we're having the flight computer do. We did one with a 20-second delay, but here the comms delay is longer than the burn. So if anything were to go wrong, there's really nothing we can do. It's all in the hands of the computer. And so far the computer seems to be doing a pretty good job. Yeah. So our trajectory is now getting really close to Venus. We time warp forwards a bit and set up another node to actually insert us. The math checks out. It's 2 kilometers per second, and we've got about 2.5 kilometers per second still in the tanks. So we should be able to do it. But before we do, let's return some science from Venusian space. Venereal space? Venereal disease? No, just science from extraterrestrial planets. Here we go, lots of points, and that's one of the objectives achieved. Very happy we did that. Now we have the maneuver nodes set up. Let's fast forward to that. Enjoy the view here. Our first eyes on the planet. I imagine this is what every spacecraft designer wishes they could see in real life, except they have to gaze through cameras. Anyway, approaching the planet. This one is brown, and I have no reason to doubt that is the color it is in real life. I have also never seen it. We're gonna go with yes, Venus looks like a potato today. Maybe tomorrow it will be different, but that's why we do these exploratory missions, to find out stuff like this. Anyway, enough blabbering. The computer has been programmed. The node is happening. The engines are igniting. And I'm just dreading the time where it won't ignite. And we have minutes of communications delay and conflicting commands that sounds far too realistic. Anyway, this burn took several minutes. The engine did not fail. It's a very reliable one, this AJ-10. And we have now, at least let's count down the burn. Well, it's a really elliptical orbit, but we definitely have established Venusian orbit. It's going to be more or less circular, according to the maneuver node. Computer's throttling down, and we have our first communications relay in orbit of Venus. And of course, a veritable shit ton of science points, which we'll spend happily to progress the space program ever further. I'm having a great time doing this. Let's see what the next episode brings. Probably more stuff to more places. At some point, the similar probe to Mars is also arriving, so good days ahead, I'm sure. For now, thanks for watching. Check out the next episode for sure. Do these things that are in your screen right now to be notified when they air, or just check every 5 minutes on your own. That's also allowed. Once more, thanks for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.